Thus it is already becoming clear that this, instead of nothing, is no superfluous addition to the real question. Instead, this turn of phrase is an essential component of the whole interrogative sentence, which as a whole expresses a completely different question from what is meant by the question. What are there beings? No, sorry, why are there beings? With our question, we establish ourselves among beings in such a way that they forfeit their self evidence as beings. Insofar as beings come to waver within the broadest and harshest possibility of oscillation, the either beings or nothing, the question itself loses every secure foothold. Our Dasein, too, as it questions, comes into suspense, and nevertheless maintains itself by itself in this suspense. But beings are not changed by our questioning. They remain what they are and as they are. After all, our questioning is just a psycho-spiritual process in us that, however it may play itself out, cannot concern beings themselves. Certainly, beings remain as they are manifest to us, and yet beings are not able to shrug off what is worthy of questioning. They, as what they are and how they are, could also not be. By no means do we experience this possibility as something that is just added on by our own thought. But beings themselves declare this possibility. They declare themselves as beings in this possibility. Our questioning just opens up the domain so that beings can break open in such question worthiness. Our questioning just opens up the domain so that beings can break open in such question worthiness. Okay. What we know about how such questioning happens is all too little and too crude. In this questioning, we seem to belong completely to ourselves. Yet it is this questioning that pushes us into the open, provided that it itself, as questioning, transforms itself, as does every genuine questioning, and casts a new space over and through everything. It is simply a matter of not being seduced by over hasty theories, but instead experiencing things as they are in whatever may be nearest. Seduced by over, like, So we, so it's a matter of not quickly putting our own theories onto the object. Instead, step back and experience the object nearest to us. Let's see what it says. This piece of chalk here is an extend, relatively stable, definitely formed, grayish-white thing, and furthermore, a thing for writing. So he's giving an example, family, about a piece of chalk. So pretend I'm holding a piece of chalk. As certainly as it belongs precisely to this thing to lie here, the capacity not to be here and not to be so big also belongs to it. The possibility of being drawn along the blackboard and used up is not something that we merely add onto the thing with our own thought. The chalk itself, as this being, is in this possibility. Otherwise, it would not be chalk as writing implement. Every being in turn has possibility in it, in a different way in each case. Okay, I agree with that. Yeah. Every being in turn has possibility in it, so everything has a potential in it. Okay, yeah. And in its own different way, in its own dynamic way. I agree with that. Possibility belongs to the chalk. It itself has in itself a definite appropriateness for a definite use. Indeed, that is true, yes. An object has its own purpose inherent within it, and that inherentness in it is used for a definite cause. I agree with that. Of course, I mean, that makes logical sense. Of course, when we look for possibility in the chalk, we are accustomed and inclined to say that we do not see it and do not grasp it. I mean, okay, Heidegger, I see the chalk's purpose. I know the chalk's purpose. Maybe he would have been better to choose a different object that we actually doubt, but that's neither here nor there. But that is a prejudice. The elimination of this prejudice is part of the unfolding of our question. So the unfolding, as in Hegelian thesis, antithesis. So our questioning will eliminate our prejudices toward the object, and thus will reveal the object's inherentness as being. Okay. For now, this question should just open up beings. Yeah. Okay, I was right. In their wavering between not being and being. Insofar as beings stand up against the extreme possibility of not being, they themselves stand in being, and yet they have never thereby overtaken and overcome the possibility of not being. Suddenly we are speaking here about the not being and being of beings, without saying how what we can call being is related to beings themselves. Are they the same? The being and its beings? No, I would say they are not. The distinction, what, for example, is the being Dasein in this piece of chalk? Already this question is ambiguous, because the word being can be understood in two ways, as can the Greek to on. On the one hand, being means what at any time is in being. In particular, this grayish-white light, breakable mass formed in such and such a way. On the other hand, being means that which, as it were, makes this being a being instead of non-being, Nichtsein. That which makes up the being in the being, if it is a being, in accordance with this twofold meaning of the word being. Okay, yeah, it does have a twofold meaning, so does he want to tell us that each object inherently contains this double twofold meaning of Dasein? Let's see. The Greek tuon often designates the second meaning, that is, not the being itself, what is in being, but rather the in being, beingness, to be in being, being. Okay? In contrast, the first meaning of being names the things themselves, are in being, either individually or as a whole, but always with reference to these things and not to their beingness. Ouisa. So, ouisa in German. The Greek noun ouisa is formed from the present participle of the verb aiani, to be. Normally means goods, possessions. Okay, so he's going to use it as a possessive. So, possessing being. Got it. The first meaning of the tuon designates taonta and tia. The second means to anai, esse. We have cataloged what the being is in the piece of chalk. We are able to find this out relatively easy. We could easily see that the chalk can also not be, that this chalk ultimately need not be here and need not be at all. But then, as distinguished from that which can be stand in being or fall back into not being, as distinguished from the being, what is being? It is the same as the being? We ask this once again. But we did not include being in our earlier catalog of attributes. We listed only material mass, grayish-white light, formed in such and such a manner, breakable. Now, where is being to be found? It must all belong to the chalk, for this chalk itself is. So being can be found in what is? Okay. Yeah, makes logical sense. We encounter beings everywhere. They surround us, carry and control us, enchant and fulfill us, elevate and disappoint us. But where in all this is the being of beings? And what does it consist in? One could answer this distinction between beings and their being may at times have some linguistic importance. Perhaps even some meaning. One can make this distinction in mere thought, that is, in representation and opinion without distinction corresponding to anything that is. But even this distinction made only in thought is questionable, for it remains unclear what we are supposed to think under the name being. Meanwhile, it is enough to be familiar with beings and to secure mastery over them, distinguishing being on top of this artificial and leads to nothing. Fascinating. Okay, we're going to leave off there and we're going to continue with being.